So I'm going to show you Microsoft Office Importer for Revit, and the program name gives you some clue as to what the program does. It helps you import Microsoft Word and Excel files, or portions of them, into different areas of a Revit project, which I will show you. And it does so with very exact formatting. It has a bunch of other features and settings, which I'll show you as well. Now, to give you some background data and also some present time data on the program running in Revit, one, it runs in Revit 2017, all the way up through and including Revit 2021. And it actually comes from a line of programs of the same name that started with MicroStation in 1996, and then AutoCAD in 2010, and then just over 2 years ago now, we took a lot of that development and pushed that into a version for Revit. So it's been around as far as the code and stuff like that for a couple of decades now. So it inherited the development from those other two versions that I told you about. Now, when you install the program, you'll get this Axiom menu or ribbon panel here, and in the upper left, these buttons I'm putting my cursor over are the program. So I'll go out to a sample Excel file and a sample Word file, and I'll do paste from both. And the way I handle these is if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt me as we go. That's totally fine. So I highlight a section of Excel. I'll do a copy. I'll go back and click paste. And then I'll click once in the upper left and finish. And when I zoom in, you'll see the paste from the Excel file. Now, you may be wondering, what is this information that I pasted that you're looking at? And the answer is this. If I go to Settings, under Pasting, notice it says Paste Excel Files As, and it says a schedule. Now, that's the default for pasting Excel into a sheet. It's a standalone schedule. It's not linked to any of the project data. But because it's a schedule, we can honor or show colored text and filled cells from Excel. Outside of a sheet, or actually, let me rephrase that. You also have the option within a sheet to paste as a detail group with text notes and lines. Now, outside of a sheet, and there's many areas we can paste into outside of a sheet, which I'll show you in a little bit, it's always going to be a detail group. And Word, no matter where we paste it, whether it's a sheet or not, it will always be a detail group. But in either case, no matter what we paste or where, because it's Revit objects, if I give this project to anyone after I have the paste in it, and I do not include the source file that the paste came from, it doesn't matter. The person that I gave the project to will see the pasted data, and they won't get any odd or weird link errors or anything like that. But if you have Microsoft Office Importer, it is linked back only through the program to the source file, and I'll give you an example. If here I click this button called Edit Source, it will find the source file, open it in its application, and highlight the exact pasted area so you don't have to go looking around for that. And then from here, I'll make a couple of obvious changes. I'll change the color of this text, and I'll change the information in this cell, save the file, and then when I go back, I'll click the Manage Link button and then say Update. Based on the changes I made in the source file, it will update the paste accordingly. This dialog box also gives you a couple of other things. One, this is the name of the source file. If the file name is changed or if it's moved on disk, you click Select, navigate out and pick it up again. It'll reset the link to the file. Also, you see it's set to update automatically when the project opens. The default for that in the Revit version is to prompt you. So you open up the project. If it sees paste that could be updated based on changes made in the source file, it will say, hey, I found paste that could be updated. Would you like to do so, yes or no? If you say yes, it will update all of the ones that need updating. If you say no, you could still manually update them one at a time through this dialog box, Manage Link, but you could also update multiple ones at a time through another dialog box, which I'll show you in just a short bit. Also, you see here for Excel attributes, top left cell, bottom right cell, this can be used in instances like this. Let's say I go to edit my source file, and I insert a column, Hi, Graham, by the way. I guess he can't hear me. So, Herman, are you still there, by the way?
Yes.
Okay, good. I didn't hear anything. I just wanted to make sure you're there. So, now, after I updated the source file and inserted that new column, when I go back, if I update the paste now, it's going to push this concrete curb and gutter column on the far right outside of the original pasted area. So with these fields, you can adjust the scope of the paste on the fly, in this case to pick up the data that was part of the paste initially. On top of that, you could also use these fields to just expand or contract the scope of the paste, or even just move the scope of the paste if you needed or wanted to do anything like that at all. So now I'm going to go to it.
You wouldn't reselect.
No, right? You wouldn't have to. You wouldn't have to for Excel. No, if you wanted to, you could delete the paste and then redo the paste if you wanted to. But with those fields, you could, move the scope of the paste without having to go back to the Excel file directly if you didn't want to.
Got it.
Cool. All right, so now I'll go to a new sheet, and I'll do a paste of my Word file, and I'm going to grab this section of it because it has a bunch of different formatting. It has different fonts, bold, italic, underlined text, numbered paragraphs, indented paragraphs, one bulleted paragraph, lettered paragraphs, but also table data and some superscript and subscript. So I'll copy that section and paste that in. Finish, and when I zoom in, you'll see that that formatting is very exactly duplicated. Now, the duplication of the formatting is so important that all of our technical personnel in our all of our personnel in our technical division, I should say, are on support duty. And the product manager of this program said specifically, if anybody gets a report on any sort of formatting issue, he wants to know about it right away so that he can work with the programming team to get it tweaked to make it handle that formatting issue. And this is linked back to the source file, just like I showed you the Excel file is, so I could update the pasted area and update the paste for Word, just like I showed you for Excel. Now, I'm going to go into a drafting view, and I'm going to do a paste of Excel in a drafting view just to show you the difference from the default of pasting it as a schedule in a sheet. It's just going to paste as a detail group with black text and lines here. And in addition to sheets, we've been able to paste into drafting views and legends pretty much since the program came out. So here's a paste of the Excel file into a drafting view. And again, this is linked back just like I showed you the other pastes are as well. It just doesn't have the colored text and filled cells. For some reason, Revit doesn't allow us to honor those things when we paste as a detail group, just so you know. Now, in addition to sheets, drafting views, and legends, about a little bit more than a year ago, we also added the ability to paste into floor plans, area plans, ceiling plans, and engineering plans as well. Now I'm going to click this button here, which is List of Links, and this opens a special dialog box called the List of Links dialog box, amazingly, and it gives you a list of all the Microsoft Office importer links in the project. If you double click on a link, it will take you to the paste, so you don't have to go looking around the project for it. Under Details, if it says Olay link, that's a Word paste always. If it says anything else, it's going to be the sheet name and the range of cells that the paste is composed of from Excel. You also see status. If the pastes if there's one or more pastes out of date, it will show you the status of those. This is based on the file modification date and time of the source file as it's written to disk. And if you see these, you could pick them and choose them using Shift or Control click Update, and it'll check all the source files, all the exact pasted areas, and update those pastes accordingly. You can also open the Manage dialog box from here, edit the source file from here. Source folder will open Windows or File Explorer into the folder where the file you've got selected is located, if you need to go look around there for whatever reason. And then Update I explain, and then Delete, you can select and delete paste, which I'm going to do just to clean things up for the next major feature that I'm going to show you here. let me go to a new sheet. Now under settings, again under pasting, but at the top of it this time, you'll see that it has an option that says split paste into columns. With that on, you can also, for Excel, tell it how many rows of header information, which is the first number of rows in the file, to copy over the top of each column that's split off. So I'm going to put 5 there and then save that setting. Now I'll go back to Excel and I'm going to grab all of this file this time. This is about 4 pages of data, by the way. And I'll paste it in. Click once. On the secondary dialog box, I'm going to click this button to split the paste. Then it gives me a representation of where the columns are going to fall. If I move up or down, it adjusts the height. If I move left or right, it adjusts the space between the columns. Then with the second mouse click, it pastes the data. And then on this secondary dialog box again, on the fly, I can tell it to repeat the header rows over every column that's split off. Click redraw. It copies them over. Click finish, and when I zoom in, there's the paste.
Sweet.
I can do this. Yep, I like to call this the magic part of the show. It's like, wait, there's more, you know. Now, I'm going to do the same thing with Word, but I'm going to make the columns specifically shorter in order to split a column or two off to the right, because I'm going to use this to give an example of and also explain a feature of splitting paste into columns that's not obvious from the program interface. So I'll click paste, and then I'll split the paste into columns. Notice I'm leaving the one kind of short column here off to the right. And oh, there's a little formatting issue there. Let me repaste that. I'm going to have to report that here. Grabbed one section of that little table. But that's not what I was going to show you. All right, so let's see here. All right, now I showed this feature for Word in particular to a prospect who's since become a customer of ours over 1.5 years ago. When I showed him this with Word, he said, look, I have this problem. I have a client where he has a Word file which contains 128 pages of specifications that the client required him to make part of his Revit project sheets. And doing it without Microsoft Office Importer was a pain, and that's why he was looking at the program. So when I showed him this, he said, what I would like to do is paste all of that Word file into one sheet, splitting the Word file into columns like I did, and then allow him to grab sheets, or columns, I should say, cut them, go to a new sheet, and then paste them in. And he said, when I do so, I want those columns to still be part of the same paste, so that if I have to update that Word file, even though I have columns split off onto the other sheets, it'll all update as one big paste still. So we modified the program for him to do that, and that works for both Word and Excel in the same type of viewer area. So I can go sheet to sheet, drafting view to drafting view, and things like that, but I can't cross views or areas. Even Revit won't allow you to do that sort of thing. Wow. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that's split paste into columns in all its glory. Now I'll go back to the program and I'll go into the settings to wrap this up. And this will probably answer some questions which you'd thought of but just hadn't asked yet. And it may answer some other questions that you just hadn't thought of yet too. So the text by default is to use the same font as the source document. That's what I've been using to do these different pastes with. But any font that's available to you in Revit, you could use as a default font. One caution, though, is if you do use a default font, in order to get the most exact match of formatting, we would recommend that you use that same font exclusively in your Word or Excel file. That way you won't run into font mapping issues where one font is used in Word or Excel and it's mapping to a different font in Revit, where you might run into font mapping issues due to differences in character height and width and character spacing font to font. Under scale, this is a scale factor which I use for demos. It's just a ratio of the point size of the text in Word or Excel to the measurement being used in Revit, which in this project is inches. But this works whether it's imperial or metric measurements, doesn't matter. However, the default is to map text sizes. And this allows you to map point sizes from Word or Excel to specific Revit text sizes. And this will fill in the text sizes based on what's in the project when you first load and run the program. And if it's metric, it'll fill in the metric text sizes here. But these fields are also directly editable. So if you wanted 10-point text, for example, to map to 3:30 seconds, which is a common one that people use in Revit, then you could edit that directly, save your settings file by going File, Save Settings. And the settings file that's currently loaded is here in the title bar, by the way. Then whenever I paste with this settings file, it will always map 10-point text to that size, 3:30 seconds. And I could clear these other ones out if I didn't want them used, or I could edit them specifically for the sizes that I wanted them to map to. And then you save your settings file out and then use those over and over. You could then also, the way the settings files are set up is you could save out different settings files to care for differences in projects or differences in work for different companies by going File, Save Settings As, give it an appropriate name like a project name or company name, set the settings in that settings file the way you want, and then when you're ready to work on that project or the work for that customer, you go File, Load Settings, load the settings file that's appropriate, and go from there. Pasting, this is where it splits paste into columns. Linking, so the default is, and the way the program was designed, is to link back to the source file and set it to automatically open or automatically update when the project opens. Again, the default for the Revit version is to prompt you before updating any paste like that when you open the project. Now, I'm going to cover something which I get asked a lot about, just because I do, I'll cover it here, which is this. What if you have a scenario where it might make sense to just paste the data into the project where you don't want it linked back to the source file, and you just want to maintain the pasted data within the project from then on? If you run into something like that, and you'd like to do that, you can do it one of two ways. You can go File, Save Settings As, give it an obvious name. I use unlinked. You can make it whatever's obvious to you. Turn that setting off, save your settings file, and all that would happen is you could still use all of the other features and settings of the program to paste the data, split the paste in the columns, set the font, the scale factor for the text, etc. But it just wouldn't be linked back to the source file. And then you could just maintain that pasted data within the project from then on if you wanted to. And then when you're ready to go back to use the program as it was designed, is load whatever settings files as appropriate to link back to the source file. The other way you could do that is to just go to your current settings file, turn off this option, do your paste, and then when you're ready to do your work as usual, just turn the setting back on, save your settings, and go from there.
Got it.
Lastly, the updating. This is a settings file setting, meaning whatever's saved in the settings file in this area, when you close Revit, the next time you open it, that's the setting that will be in force. So the default here is for Revit is to prompt you before updating any automatic paste when you open the project. You say yes, it updates all the ones that need updating. If you say no, you can still manually update them through the Manage Link or List of Links dialog box. In addition, you could change it if you wanted to this one, which says update all the automatic paste without asking. That way you'd open the project, it would just update the ones that need to be updating without any intervention from you. Now, that happens to be the AutoCAD and MicroStation default. The Revit users wanted more control over that, so we changed the default specifically for them to the second one, just so you know. Lastly, you could say don't update any automatic paste at all. In that case, you'd open the project, it leaves them alone, and then you could still manually update them, like I mentioned before, through the Manage Link dialog box or the List of Links dialog box too. So that's Microsoft Office Importer for Revit in all its glory.